Alright, what's going on, guys? Berserk 369 is officially out, and I don't even know what to make of it at this point. I'm still trying to process it in my head right now, and I am just absolutely confused. I mean, there are just so many emotions rushing through my head right now, and the prime one is just depression and sadness. I mean, oh my gosh, what a chapter, guys. Now, officially, this ends the Fantasia arc, and let's just get right into it, because I just gotta get some words out right now. Now, we start the chapter with Shirka and Farnese, and Shirka is saying, "Guts, where are you? Please say something." And then we see Guts on the ground, still reeling from the situation between him and Griffith, and Shirka screams out, "Guts, you'll fall! Guts!" We then see in the background that the various structures of Elfhelm are crumbling down into the earth, and Puck is very panicked, and we see that his wings are almost like discolored a little bit. Some of them are shaded a little bit darkly, some are shaded a little bit lightly. This will become more crucial as we get further into the chapter. And then on the ground, we see a couple of dark figures running away from the dark specters that we saw in the last chapter. We don't really know who these figures are. And then leading up the hill here, we see various mages sort of making their way up to the higher land, obviously to get away from these dark specters and to protect themselves. And then it looks like leading the charge, we see Isidro, Isma, Dannan, and then some of the other various mages. We can't really make out who they are, but they're all sort of running up this hill for safety reasons. And then we hear the screaming of Guts. I would presume this is still Shirka, and Guts is in pain, he's sweating, he's all sad from the situation that just transpired between him and Griffith. And he's leaning on his Dragon Slayer for support. He's all sad, and he's thinking in his mind, I can't even land one blow. So he's still thinking about the fight. And this is actually kind of a sad moment in a lot of ways, because I would have thought he would have been thinking of Casca right now, but the main thought in his head is that he couldn't hurt Griffith. So does that mean hurting and killing Griffith is more important to him than actually saving Casca? Because Casca was just ripped from his arms, you'd think he'd be more sad about that, but maybe it's a situation where there's just so many bad emotions in his head right now that it's just like, it's too much for him to handle. Who the heck knows, but in the next panel, he starts to lean on his Dragon Slayer, he drops to his knees, and it's just a very cathartic moment. He's just letting all these emotions sort of just pour out of him. Frustration, anger, sadness, it's just all on his face right there. And then as he's leaning on his Dragon Slayer, we see right behind him, we see the various cliffs and the trees sort of just breaking off from the island. Everything is being torn asunder. Skull Knight is slashing through various dark specters with his sword. I mean, what else would he be doing right now if not killing some baddies? So, yeah, he's doing that. And then someone says, what a calamity. I think it's probably the Skull Knight. That seems to make the most sense. And again, everything is just breaking apart. We see like a path like sort of disintegrating. I don't know if that's the path that Skull Knight and Guts took when they went to Hanar. It kind of looks like that sort of winding path that they took. It's hard to say. I mean, everything is breaking apart. Everything is a little bit obscure right now, so we don't have all the details, but that kind of seems like the situation. We see the island breaking apart into many different pieces. Water is pervading the land. And then this panel right here, I'm not really sure what's going on. Like, we see something in the background. I don't know, like, if that's like water shooting up or if that's light. And then it looks like water shooting up on the right-hand side of this panel. And then, we got a mountain in the middle. Yeah, there's a lot of panels within this chapter, guys, where, like, there's no dialogue, so you kind of have to, like, piece together the clues, and there's a lot of things that happen that are obviously not explained, and, like, you just have to be like, well, I guess we're gonna have to wait for future chapters before we know anything about that. And then we see the dark specters on the island. It looks like they're trying to rush into the sea, but they can't go any further. Now, this is actually explained relatively quickly. We go to Roderick's seahorse. His hands are shaking, and one of his crewmates grabs onto his hand and sort of wakes him up. So I don't know exactly what happened to Roderick here. He was sort of like passed out in a daze a little bit, but one of his crewmates wakes him up. They're like, "Captain, thank God you're safe." Roderick's sort of trying to figure out what's going on here, but his crewmate tells him that those black slimy things, as they were, act like a haze, and that they evaporate after contact with light and seawater. Now, when you think of like a haze, you kind of think of a state of like mental obscurity. It almost seems that not only do these dark spirits and specters cause death and rip away all your vitality, they can sort of like obscure your consciousness. They can sort of almost hijack your consciousness and just sort of remove it and create this darkness, create this void, if it were. That's an interesting choice of words that I just used, void. But anyway, very interesting though that the clarity of water and that the brilliance and that the purity of light sort of prevent the darkness, prevent these dark spirits from affecting them. So that's very interesting. That may be a clue for things to come in the future. Because we know at Enoch Village that Shirka summoned this sort of wave of water to sort of wash away the village, wash away the evil, and that sort of got rid of all the ogres and the trolls and the kelpies. So is that sort of a clue for the future as well? That battle at Falconia that's presumably going to happen with all the apostles, is the answer to those apostles some sort of huge deluge from the mages that will wash away all these dark spirits, all these dark apostles? Will the answer to defeating Griffith's army be through water? Very possible. Now, moving forward, many of the men are still in the water, so Roderick's crew is tossing over various barrels and supplies from the ship to save them. And then we get a very nice shot of the island here, almost like a shot as if you were riding in like a helicopter or an airplane or something. You know, you see the whole perspective of the island. You know, things have been torn asunder, as it were. Things have all been washed away by the darkness. And the shot just below this, where Isidro, Isma, Serpico, Dannan, all the mages and all the magical creatures of the island are just watching on in bated breath, are just watching on in silence and horror. It's very beautiful and frightening in the same regard. I mean, the image itself, the artist did a very phenomenal job on this. I mean, holy cow, look at the level of detail, guys. Everyone's facial expressions are on point. Everything is just conveyed so beautifully here, and yet it's just so somber and sad and petrifying at the same time. I mean, all these mages and magical creatures just lost their homeland, and they might be losing more than that very soon. We'll get to that in just a bit here. And now we see like the various crewmates of Roderick sort of washing up onto the shore here. Some of them are still alive. Some of them appear to be passed out. I don't know if they're dead or if they're just unconscious. We just got a lot of images without dialogue, so it's like you sort of have to take some guesses here and there. And then we got some nice shots again of Roderick's crew, more shots of the island. We got a sea level perspective of like the barrels and the island in the distance. And then we get a nice close-up of Isidro's face saying no way. And Isma, you know, kind of clenching onto his shoulder for support, physical and emotional support. And even just Dannan's face here, you could just tell that she's intimidated and unnerved by the situation. And she definitely has some inside information for what's about to come as well. So you can almost tell that she has this dreadful fear that's just sort of building up within her. And then this is the big reveal of the chapter, guys. I did not see this coming whatsoever. I don't know if anyone saw this coming, but Isidro gets alarmed. He looks over at Isma, and all of a sudden, Isma is staring at her hand, and it seems to be evaporating into light. That's just the best way I can describe it. And then Dannan says, "It's time. We cannot remain in the corporeal world." And she is also evaporating into light as well. We then have a nice shot of Volvapa, Gedfring, the various older mages, and Hanar. And they all look to be fearful and befuddled themselves. And then Isidro is just so sad right now. He's like, what the heck is going on? And then Isma reaches out for Isidro, trying to make some sense out of the situation. And possibly the saddest panel of the chapter. No, I'm going to claim it right here. This is the saddest panel. Isidro is reaching out for Isma. He's like, what the heck is going on? And her body is gone, just like that. Only her clothing remains, and she's gone. Her body does not exist in the corporeal form. And for Isidro, this is like equivalent of what just happened to Casca for Guts. He's got no answers, her body is gone, and we don't know if it's gonna return, guys. I mean, holy cow. Now, immediately what I'm thinking about, guys, is Quathoth. Now, I realize that I probably have been saying this wrong in my previous videos. I tried to look up the pronunciation. I think it might be Qlipoth, but I'm probably even saying that wrong. So if anyone knows the correct pronunciation, please put that in the comments so I can say it correctly in the future. But remember how Slan in the God Hand cannot take a corporeal form in the physical realm unless a special situation arises. In Qlipoth, Slan was able to do so because they were entering a very shallow realm of the astral realm. Now, is Elfhelm a shallow realm of the reverse of the astral realm? Is it sort of a shallow realm of like the godly, heavenly-like realm? And because the barrier was broken, does that mean that they can no longer exist in a corporeal form? I know there's a lot of people in the comments of this chapter saying that Isma and Dannan and the mages are all dead now. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Slan did not die when Guts ran his sword through her body and blasted her with the cannon. I think it's just she dissipated into her natural form, which was basically thoughts and ideas, negative swirling emotions. Dannan, the mages, and Marrow are positive swirling emotions. Or so it would seem. They seem to be the inverse of the God Hand. And because the positive swirling emotions that surrounded Elfhelm are gone, because the barrier was broken, as it were, it seems like they can no longer exist within this current form. So I don't necessarily think that they're dead. I think they somehow still exist, but it's going to take a concentration of positive thoughts to bring them back to that physical realm again. So we probably won't be seeing them for quite some time. That would be my guess, at least. And then in the next panel, we see Dannan dissolving into the light as well. We see her drop her staff. The various mages are besides themselves, wondering what the heck just happened. The Marrow in the very next panel, they seem to be dissipating as well. The various island spirits and magical creatures are dissipating. We also see the various elves dissipating, and we just see these huge concentrations of light just dissolving into the night sky, dissolving into the earth, as it were. So it's just, wow, it's a very powerful image, and it's just welling up all these emotions for the characters and for myself, guys. I mean, what a powerful way to express everything that's happening right now. And then we see Serpico, Isidro, and the various mages. There's so much emotion in this image. I like how one of the mages is holding her arm, you know, very saddened and very scared about what's going on right now. It looks like one of the mages in the far right corner is Kuka. She was the one that was talking to Shirka, and she was on the island when the Guts' party first got there. Now, the one criticism I do have about this panel is that the expression on the mages' faces is absent. Now, this is always done in manga when, like, there's a background character and you just, like, you don't want to put every last detail on them, so you kind of skip over it a little bit. But I feel like it's important to do here, especially given what just happened, and especially given that this is Berserk, and Kentaro Miura would have definitely have drawn their faces and would have put those details in place to sort of give more weight and more power and more emotion to the situation that just transpired. So I feel like that's a little bit of a missed opportunity. It's still a very great panel, but it could have been so much better. And then we transition back to Guts, and Guts is leaning on his sword, and we have a different perspective of him collapsed on the ground. And I love how this image makes him look so small in comparison to like the world spiral tree and the island itself. Like, even though he's this force to be reckoned with, even though he's the Uber Chad, given what just happened, he looks like almost like a grain of sand. He looks like nothing. And it's so humbling in a lot of ways, and it makes you realize that Guts is back to being by himself again. I always had these thoughts that maybe Guts and the mages would go to war with the demons, but that might not be the case anymore. It might be Guts and Guts alone. Well, I should correct myself. The mages did not dissolve into light. They are still there on the island, so they could still help out the Guts' party. I would imagine Shirka's gonna round up the mages, sort of congregate with Guts, and say, hey, we gotta do something about this. Now, the big thing, though, is that Dannan is gone. I thought Dannan was gonna be, like, the most powerful mage on the island. I thought that she would rival the God Hand in a lot of ways, so she would be a huge asset. Now, she could still be a huge asset. Remember how Gedfring was talking about that there's a way to summon daemons? Heroes and myths of past times can be summoned through magic, and he was talking about the fact that maybe Shirka could summon Flora in the future. Well, maybe there's going to be a way for Gedfring to summon Dannan in the future battles. So who the heck knows? Now, I want to clarify my position, guys. I do not believe that Flora, the magical creatures, and that the various elves and Puck are dead. I do not believe that whatsoever. I know there's a lot of people in the comments that sort of jump to that conclusion, but like I said, they are the inverse of the God Hand and the Apostles. They cannot exist within the human realm unless there's a special circumstance. For the Apostles, there's got to be a lot of swirling negative emotions. For a God Hand member, it's got to be in an overlapping area of the astral realm with the physical realm, like Klipoth. For these sort of creatures, there's got to be a huge congregation of positive emotions. And because that was lost, because everyone is in despair right now, they no longer can maintain their corporeal form. So that's my thought. I don't think they're dead. I think we will still see Puck. I still believe we'll see Dannan, and they will come back at some point in the future. And then, of course, the final words to this chapter are the tranquil aftermath of a storm that swept away everything but despair. And I think that tells you everything that you need to know. It's what I've been alluding to in my final soliloquy here. So yeah, that's it, guys. Tell me what you thought of this chapter in the comments. We will be getting the next Berserk chapter on October 14th. So it seems like they're going to continue the monthly trend of releasing Berserk chapters. And yeah, wow, what a chapter. So much to say about this one. I'll probably be making a follow-up video to analyze specific parts of this chapter in the future. But subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.